A lot of women spend way too much energy asking the wrong questions. How do I get him to choose me? How do I get him to commit? How do I make him see what I'm worth? Those questions sound reasonable on the surface, but they quietly place your happiness in someone else's hands. They turn love into a performance instead of a connection. They make you believe that if you just become prettier, more patient, less emotional, more understanding, or somehow more perfect, then one day he'll finally recognize your value. It's a quiet belief that rarely appears all at once. Instead, it slips into your thinking little by little, almost without you noticing. One disappointment turns into self-doubt. One unanswered message becomes a reason to question yourself. One cancelled plan becomes proof that you need to improve something about who you are. Before long, you're no longer asking whether the relationship is healthy. You're asking whether you're enough. So you begin changing. Maybe you become quieter because you've been told you're too emotional. You stop expressing disappointment because you don't want to seem demanding. You pretend you're okay with things that genuinely hurt you because you're afraid honesty might push him away. You laugh when something bothers you. You swallow your tears. You convince yourself that being easygoing is the key to finally being loved the way you deserve. At first, those changes seem small. You tell yourself you're simply compromising. You tell yourself every relationship requires sacrifice. You tell yourself you're learning patience. But over time, those small compromises begin to reshape your identity. You stop recognizing the woman you used to be. The confident person who once spoke openly about her feelings slowly becomes someone who carefully measures every word before saying it. The woman who once had clear standards begins lowering them one by one, believing that asking for consistency is somehow asking for too much. Then you start comparing yourself to other women. Maybe if you looked like her, maybe if you dressed differently, maybe if you were more successful, maybe if you were less independent, maybe if you needed him less, maybe if you needed him more. No matter which direction you turn, it always feels like you're missing one final piece that will suddenly make everything fall into place. But here's the painful truth. When someone is emotionally unavailable, no amount of self-improvement can create emotional availability inside them. You cannot love someone into readiness. You cannot prove yourself into commitment. You cannot become perfect enough to erase another person's fear of intimacy, uncertainty, or unwillingness to invest. Yet many women spend years believing the opposite. Every time he pulls away, they assume they've done something wrong. Every time he becomes distant, they search for mistakes in themselves. Every time he hesitates about the future, they promise to become even more understanding. Instead of asking why he keeps withdrawing, they ask how they can become easier to stay with. That's an incredibly heavy burden to carry because it places responsibility for the entire relationship onto one person's shoulders. Love stops feeling mutual. It becomes a project, a performance, a constant attempt to earn something that should never have required earning in the first place. The exhausting part is that this pursuit has no finish line, because perfection doesn't exist. If you're quieter, you'll worry you're not exciting enough. If you're more expressive, you'll worry you're too much. If you're independent, you'll fear seeming distant. If you're affectionate, you'll fear appearing needy. The goalposts keep moving because the problem was never actually you. When someone isn't ready, isn't willing, or simply isn't choosing the relationship wholeheartedly, you'll always feel like you're trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Many women mistake occasional affection for lasting commitment. He has one wonderful week, and suddenly all the months of inconsistency seem easier to excuse. He says something incredibly sweet after weeks of distance, and hope returns stronger than ever. He gives just enough reassurance to keep the relationship alive, but never enough consistency to make it secure. So you keep waiting. You keep improving. You keep believing that the next version of yourself will finally be the version he chooses. Meanwhile, your own needs quietly disappear into the background. You stop asking for reassurance because you don't want to create pressure. You stop expecting effort because you've convinced yourself that expectations are unfair. You stop expressing disappointment because you're grateful for whatever attention you receive. Without realizing it, you begin surviving on emotional crumbs while calling them a feast. But love should never require you to become smaller to keep someone comfortable. It should never require you to silence your emotions to avoid being called too sensitive. It should never ask you to apologize simply for wanting consistency, honesty, affection, or clarity. Those aren't unreasonable expectations. They're the foundation of emotional intimacy. Here's something worth remembering. The right person won't fall in love with a version of you that's been edited to fit their comfort. They'll value the real you, the one with dreams, fears, opinions, imperfections, strengths, and vulnerabilities. Real love isn't built by hiding yourself. It's built by revealing yourself safely, and that safety only exists when both people are willing to meet each other with honesty, respect, and care. The irony is that many women become the least authentic in the relationships they care about the most. They're so afraid of losing someone that they slowly lose themselves instead. They stop speaking honestly. They stop setting boundaries. They stop honoring their intuition. Deep down, they know something feels off, but they convince themselves that love requires endless patience rather than mutual effort. Your intuition often notices the truth long before your heart is ready to accept it. It recognizes when you're carrying the relationship alone. It notices when promises repeatedly replace action. It feels the difference between someone who is genuinely building a future with you and someone who simply enjoys having you around without making a real commitment. The hardest part is accepting that another person's inability to choose you is not evidence that you're unworthy of being chosen. Sometimes it simply reflects where they are emotionally. Sometimes it reflects incompatible values. Sometimes it reflects fear. Sometimes it reflects immaturity. And sometimes it reflects a simple truth that's painful but freeing. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. That realization isn't a defeat. It's an invitation to stop measuring your worth through someone else's hesitation, because your value has never depended on convincing someone to see it. Your kindness is still kindness, even if someone takes it for granted. Your loyalty is still loyalty, even if someone fails to appreciate it. Your love is still extraordinary, even if it's offered to the wrong person. The day you stop trying to become perfect for someone else's approval is often the day you begin returning to yourself. You stop chasing validation. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold all of who you are. You stop believing that love must be earned through endless sacrifice. Instead, you begin looking for relationships where your presence is appreciated rather than merely tolerated, where your heart is protected rather than constantly tested, and where you are valued not because you became someone else, but because you finally realized that who you already are has always been enough. But here's the thing. The right man never makes you spend years trying to talk him into wanting you. He doesn't leave you guessing where you stand. He doesn't make you feel like you're auditioning for a permanent role in his life while he keeps postponing the decision. And that's something many women realize much later than they wish they had. The truth is that love should never feel like an endless interview where you're constantly proving why you deserve to stay. Healthy relationships don't require endless convincing. They require mutual willingness. Two people choosing each other again and again. Many women confuse inconsistency with mystery. They mistake emotional distance for depth. They think that if a man is difficult to understand, he must simply be afraid of intimacy or carrying hidden wounds that only the right woman can heal. So they wait. They explain away mixed signals. They excuse broken promises. They tell themselves that he's just stressed, overwhelmed, confused, or not ready. Days become months. Months become years. And somewhere along the way, they stop asking whether he's right for them and become completely focused on whether they can become right for him. That shift changes everything. Instead of evaluating the relationship, they begin evaluating themselves. Every unanswered text feels like evidence that they're not enough. Every cancelled plan feels like proof they should try harder. Every emotional withdrawal becomes another puzzle they're determined to solve. But love isn't supposed to be a puzzle that only one person is trying to complete. Real love isn't built on constant uncertainty. It isn't fueled by anxiety or sustained by hope alone. It grows through consistency, through honesty, through emotional safety, through two people who are equally invested in building something together. Think about the relationships that leave people emotionally exhausted. Most of the time, it isn't because there wasn't attraction. It isn't because there weren't beautiful moments. It's because those beautiful moments became breadcrumbs that kept someone waiting for a meal that never arrived. One wonderful weekend cannot erase months of emotional absence. One heartfelt conversation cannot replace consistent effort. One promise means very little if it is never followed by action. People often fall in love with potential instead of reality. They become attached to who someone could be rather than who they consistently show themselves to be. They imagine what the relationship might become if only the timing were better, if only his career settled down, if only he healed from his past, if only he finally realized what he had. But relationships are lived in the present. Potential cannot comfort you when you're lonely. Potential cannot build trust. Potential cannot create emotional security. Only consistent behavior can do that. One of the hardest lessons many women learn is that chemistry is not the same as compatibility. You can have incredible attraction with someone who is completely unavailable. You can feel an intense emotional pull towards someone who simply isn't capable of giving you the relationship you need. Strong feelings don't automatically create a strong relationship. In fact, sometimes the strongest emotional highs come from the most unstable situations. The uncertainty itself creates intensity. The unpredictability keeps your nervous system constantly searching for reassurance. Every small act of affection feels enormous because you've gone so long without receiving it. That isn't love growing stronger. That's emotional deprivation making small moments feel bigger than they are. Healthy love feels different. It doesn't constantly leave you wondering whether today's affection will disappear tomorrow. It doesn't make you afraid to express your needs because you're worried you'll scare him away. It doesn't require you to shrink yourself just to maintain peace. The right relationship gives you room to breathe. You don't have to analyze every text message looking for hidden meanings. You don't have to wonder whether introducing you to his friends means something or nothing. You don't have to question whether you're important because his actions answer that question without you having to ask. That's what emotional consistency looks like. It doesn't mean perfection. Everyone has difficult days. Everyone gets stressed. Everyone makes mistakes. But there's a difference between someone having human imperfections and someone making uncertainty the foundation of the relationship. A man who genuinely wants to build a future with you doesn't disappear every time things become emotionally uncomfortable. He doesn't repeatedly pull you close only to push you away. He doesn't expect unlimited patience while offering very little clarity. He communicates. He shows up. He follows through. His words and actions begin to match. And when they don't, he takes responsibility instead of making excuses. One of the biggest traps women fall into is believing that the amount they suffer determines the value of the love. They think that because they've invested so much time, emotion, forgiveness, and hope, the relationship must eventually pay off. But love doesn't work like a savings account. The years you've already invested don't guarantee future happiness. Sometimes they simply make it harder to leave because you don't want to believe that all your effort led nowhere. This is known as the sunk cost trap. The more you've invested, the more difficult it becomes to walk away, even when staying continues to hurt you. But staying longer doesn't transform an unhealthy relationship into a healthy one. Time alone changes very little. Mutual effort changes everything. Here's another truth that deserves to be said more often. Your worth isn't determined by someone's ability to recognize it. A diamond doesn't become less valuable because someone mistakes it for ordinary glass. Likewise, your kindness, intelligence, loyalty, compassion, and love don't lose their value simply because one person fails to appreciate them. The wrong person can make you question qualities that the right person will treasure effortlessly. That's why chasing validation is so exhausting. No amount of proving yourself can force someone to value what they are unwilling or unable to see. The healthiest relationships are surprisingly simple in many ways. Not easy, not effortless, but simple. Both people want to be there. Both people communicate. Both people make sacrifices. Both people protect the relationship. Neither person has to spend years wondering whether they're loved. When someone truly values you, you don't have to constantly remind them that you exist. They naturally include you in their life. They consider your feelings when making decisions. They make space for your dreams alongside their own. They don't see commitment as losing freedom. They see it as choosing partnership. Of course, no relationship is perfect. Every couple faces disagreements, misunderstandings, disappointments, and seasons of difficulty. But healthy couples face those challenges together rather than allowing one person to carry the entire emotional weight. Love is not measured by how much pain you can tolerate. It's measured by how willing both people are to protect each other's peace. Imagine spending the same amount of energy you've been using to convince someone else to love you on loving yourself instead. Imagine investing those hours into your friendships, your passions, your health, your confidence, your career, your purpose. Imagine becoming so grounded in your own value that you stop accepting relationships that require constant self-abandonment. Everything begins to change. Your standards become clearer. Your boundaries become stronger. Your choices become healthier. You stop mistaking attention for intention. You stop confusing temporary affection with lasting commitment. You stop believing that almost love is enough, because almost being chosen still means you're not fully chosen, and everyone deserves more than almost. The right relationship won't remove every challenge from your life, but it will remove one enormous burden, the constant fear of where you stand. You'll know. Not because someone makes grand speeches every week, but because they consistently show you through ordinary moments. They call when they say they will. They keep their promises. They introduce you proudly. They make plans that include tomorrow. They support you when life becomes difficult. They celebrate your victories instead of competing with them. They create emotional safety instead of emotional confusion. In the end, perhaps the most powerful question isn't, how do I get him to choose me? The better question is this relationship allowing me to be fully myself? Or is it slowly teaching me to abandon parts of who I am just to keep someone interested? Because real love never asks you to earn your humanity. It doesn't require you to sacrifice your self-respect for someone else's attention. It doesn't demand endless waiting while your own life stands still. The right person won't expect you to spend years proving that you're worthy of love. They'll recognize your value, not because you're flawless, but because they're emotionally available enough to appreciate what you genuinely bring into their life. And when that kind of love arrives, you'll notice something remarkable. You'll spend far less time wondering whether you're enough. Because for the first time, you'll be with someone who isn't making you chase certainty. They're giving it to you freely, consistently, and without making you beg for a place in their heart. That's the kind of love that allows two people not merely to survive together, but to truly flourish side by side. When a man is genuinely right for you, the relationship still isn't flawless. You'll still hit rough patches. You'll still argue. You'll still go through hard seasons together. But certain patterns show up consistently, not because he's perfect, not because life magically stops throwing obstacles at you, but because when a man actually sees a future with you, it shows up in how he acts. The issue is a lot of women overlook those patterns. They get caught up in the sparks, the excitement, the intensity of it all, and miss the stuff that actually counts. So let's go through 5 things that tend to happen, almost without fail, when a man is truly right for you. First, you're not stuck trying to convince him to care. This might be the biggest indicator of all. You're not spending your relationship begging him to call, negotiating for his time, pleading for effort, or talking him into showing you basic attention. So many women end up stuck in relationships where they're constantly fighting for the bare minimum, asking for attention, asking for consistency, asking for communication, asking for effort, and every single conversation turns into a negotiation. But when a man is actually meant for you, his care isn't something you have to drag out of him. It just shows up naturally. That doesn't mean he's a mind reader. It doesn't mean he's never going to mess up. But it does mean that what he does over and over tells you that you matter to him. Because here's the truth. People make time for the things that matter to them. They invest in what matters. They protect what matters. A man who genuinely wants you in his life isn't someone you have to keep reminding that you exist. One of the most draining things a woman can go through is feeling like she's the only one holding the relationship together. Always the one reaching out. Always the one smoothing things over. Always the one chasing. Always the one doing the emotional heavy lifting. A relationship that's actually right doesn't feel like that because you're not the only one putting in the work. And that matters because love was never supposed to be a one-person job. Second, he brings you calm, not constant confusion. So many women mistake emotional chaos for passion, the hot and cold texting, the mixed signals, the not knowing where you stand, constantly wondering if he still likes you, if he still cares, why he's acting distant, where things are even headed, and somehow all that uncertainty gets mislabeled as love. But confusion isn't proof that someone's right for you. It's usually a sign that something's off. When a man is actually meant for you, You're not spending your days trying to decode his behavior. You don't need to send screenshots to your group chat trying to figure out what he really meant. You're not turning into a detective because his intentions are already clear. Not perfect, clear. Those are two very different things. You just know he cares. You know he values what you have. You know he's actually present. And that creates a real sense of peace. That kind of emotional calm is one of the most underrated forms of attraction out there. A lot of women don't even realize how worn down they've become until they're finally in a relationship that feels safe. One where they're not bracing for something to go wrong. One where steadiness replaces the chaos. That's not boring. That's healthy. And healthy can feel strange at first if chaos is what you're used to. Third, his decisions take you into account. This one's huge. A man who actually sees you in his future starts thinking differently. His choices stop being just about him. He starts weighing how those choices affect you too. Not because you're controlling him, not because you're demanding it, but because that's simply what happens when someone becomes important to you. Think about it. When someone really matters to you, they naturally factor into how you make decisions. You think about their feelings, their schedule, what they need, where they're headed. The same thing happens in a real relationship. A man who's actually right for you doesn't treat you like you're just passing through his life. He makes space for you. He thinks ahead with you in mind. He factors the relationship into his choices, and that's one of the clearest signs that you're not just part of his present, you're part of where he sees himself going. A lot of women pay attention to what a man says, but the better question is whether his actual decisions include you. Because talk is easy. What someone actually prioritizes shows up in what they do. Fourth, you feel more like yourself, not less. This might be the sign that gets overlooked the most. A lot of women assume that love means shrinking, giving up pieces of who they are, making themselves smaller, constantly adjusting to keep the peace. But a relationship that's actually good for you does the complete opposite. It helps you become more fully yourself, not less. You're not putting on a performance. You're not hiding parts of your personality. You're not walking on eggshells. You're not living in fear that one wrong move will make him walk away. Instead, you feel accepted. You feel seen. You feel safe. And because of that, you relax. You stop trying so hard to be flawless. Stop overthinking every word. Stop living on edge. One of the strongest signs a man is truly right for you is that your life gets bigger around him, not smaller. You keep growing. You keep dreaming. You keep becoming who you're supposed to become. Because real, healthy love supports your growth. It doesn't ask you to erase yourself, and any relationship that requires you to disappear just to survive is asking way more of you than it should. Fifth, the relationship actually moves forward. This is the one a lot of women avoid thinking about too hard, because it forces them to face reality. When a man is genuinely right for you, things progress. Maybe not fast, maybe not perfectly, but there's forward motion, there's growth, there's change. Too many women find themselves stuck in the same spot for years, waiting, hoping, wondering, trying to be patient, trying not to ask for too much, while nothing actually shifts. The relationship stays stuck in place. The conversations stay vague. The commitment never gets defined. The future stays foggy. And before you know it, years have gone by. Here's a hard truth. People don't need years to know if they want to build something with someone. They might need time for circumstances to line up, time for logistics, time to grow. But real interest always creates movement. A man who genuinely sees a future with you isn't going to stay frozen in place forever. He takes steps. He has real conversations. He makes actual plans. He creates progress because people naturally move toward what they truly want. That's why standing still is often one of the clearest answers a woman can get. If nothing's moving, that's worth paying attention to, because real relationships are meant to grow, not stay frozen in time. Notice what didn't make this list: looks, money, chemistry, big romantic gestures. None of that actually guarantees someone is right for you, because the strongest relationships aren't built on intensity. They're built on consistency. The right man doesn't leave you constantly questioning your own worth. He doesn't make you beg for basic effort. He doesn't make you feel like loving you is some kind of chore for him. Instead, what he does creates clarity, peace, security, progress, and growth. That's why the real sign a man is meant for you isn't that he says all the right words, it's that how he acts actually makes your life better. Not perfect, better. Because when a man is genuinely right for you, you won't spend years trying to force something into existence that isn't there. You'll see real effort. You'll see real intention. You'll see real movement. And most of all, you'll see consistency. A relationship that's actually right for you doesn't make you fight for basic love. It gives you every reason to trust it.